This is the Shortpod, a brief and succinct podcast commenting on the events and issues of the day. And today it is the 28th of March, 2023. The big news in the UK is the election of Humza Yousaf as First Minister of Scotland. As a native of Scotland, I thought I should probably chime in and give my quick take on this event. First of all, I'd like to say it's not very important, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be quite triggering for a lot of people because Scotland is basically an overwhelmingly white country with something like 95% white people, and somehow, in some weird and wacky way, a brown man of Punjabi background has managed to get himself into the position of First Minister. Now, what's really going on here? Is this an example of extremely perverted race cucking by the Scottish people, or is it something else? Now, the reason that Humza won the election is because of the nature of the SNP. And not only the nature of the SNP, but the change in nature of the SNP. People associate the SNP with Scottishness. That is a cardinal mistake. Some time ago, I looked into the SNP. I looked into every single MP, every single Scottish Parliament MP, and my research at that time concluded that at least half of the prominent people in the party are actually what I refer to as crypto-Hibernians. That is, they are people of Irish Catholic background. Scottish crypto-Hibernians are a particular type of unassimilated immigrant population. Now, Scotland has been receiving Irish immigration for hundreds of years. We started to have a very large number of Irish coming over with the Industrial Revolution in order to build railways and dig canals. With the Irish famine, there was a surge in Irish immigration. And cities like Glasgow and Dundee and Edinburgh, they all have large populations of people of Irish background. Somebody like Sean Connery, the famous 007 character, he was 25% Irish. The name Connery is an Irish name. So Scotland has a very large number of Irish people. Some of them, like in the case of Connery, they become quite Scottish. They don't really have a chip on their shoulder. They fit in. They're quite successful. There's a lot of people of Irish background who do very, very well in Scotland, and so on. But there is also a large number of crypto-Hibernians who are deeply resentful towards Britain and towards Britishness and towards the Union and towards the monarchy and towards Scotland itself. These people see Scotland mainly as a vehicle for attacking the UK, and they find their natural political home in the SNP. Now, the SNP is not just made up of this type of person. A few years ago, the SNP was riding high. It was attracting a lot of support. It seemed to be the rising trend. A lot of people were attracted to that. A lot of normal Scottish people got on board. However, the dominant constituency in the SNP is this resentful anti-British crypto-Hibernian element. For people like that, somebody like Nicola Sturgeon was an attractive personality with her abrasively anti-British characteristics. And when she resigned recently, they were looking for a suitable, similar candidate who could channel that vibe. And I think in Humza Yousaf, they found it. Humza Yousaf is this unlikable, resentful brown person who is mainly famous now for complaining about how so many positions in Scotland were filled by white people. You know, he's saying this about a country which is 95% or more white, And he's surprised that there are many white people in prominent positions in the country. That is a kind of obvious absurdity. And so all that did was sort of reveal Humza to be a very kind of resentful person with a very deeply ingrained victim mentality. And this is exactly what the dominant constituency in the SNP wanted. Now, I think if this election had happened a couple of years ago, Humza would not have done quite so well, because back then the SNP, as I said, was riding high. They were attracting a wider range of people. It was actually a bigger party, a bigger tent. Now, back in 2018, the SNP had a membership of around 125,000. Now, 5 years later, actually less than 5 years later, because that figure is from December 2018, less than 5 years later, the SNP's membership has shrunk. In the latest leadership election, I saw on the BBC that around 70,000 members were eligible to vote. In the actual election itself, I think it was around 52,000 members who took the trouble to vote. And of that 52,000, round about 26 or 27,000 ended up voting for Humza Yusuf. So, as you can see, the party has greatly shrunk and contracted in recent years. And that's, for obvious reasons. The novelty's worn off. The bounce that the party got from the, when was it? The 2014 referendum, that's dissipated. Scottish nationalism looks increasingly like a dead end. Scottish people don't want to leave the UK and the European Union. And since we've already left the European Union, Scottish people are even more reluctant to leave the UK. Scotland doesn't want to be a small, isolated country. So the central narrative of Scottish independence has become less and less attractive to ordinary people. But it is still deeply attractive to this core constituency of the SNP of deeply resentful crypto-Hibernians who simply hate Britain for all the usual reasons about history, about Cromwell, about the potato famine, blah, blah, blah. And so it's this group that is essentially, seen a kindred spirit in this resentful brown man who was probably bullied at school, and have decided to put him in as leader of Scotland. Now, at the beginning I said this is not very important. In my view, the Scottish Parliament was always set up to fail. Now, you can tell this from the fact that it was set up on the model of proportional representation. The British Parliament in Westminster works because it is not set up on the model of proportional representation. It's set up on the first past the post system. And whether you like that or not, whether you have criticisms of that or not, it tends to create strong governments, as we saw in the last election where the Conservative Party got a very potent majority. Now, in the case of the Scottish Parliament, it's very, very difficult to get that kind of majority. And at the last election, the SNP was still riding high. Nicola Sturgeon was still campaigning hard. The Labour Party in Scotland and the Conservative Party in Scotland still hadn't really got their acts together. And the SNP got a very high percentage of the vote, but it was still just under 50%. Now, under the Westminster model, that would have given them an incredibly large majority. They would have probably have got 60 to 70% of the seats. But in the case of the Scottish Parliament, it meant that the SNP just failed to get a majority, which forced them to do a dirty deal with the Green Party. The Green Party managed to get a few seats in Parliament, and the SNP decided to bend over backwards to get them on board. Now, that's the high water mark of the SNP. They're extremely unlikely to see that. The party is waning, it's in decline, it's losing members, it's losing popularity, it's a spent force. People realise that it doesn't have much to offer, and so it's going to sink back. In Scotland, you're going to have a situation where you have three main parties, and in addition to that, you're also going to have a secondary party, the Lib Dems, and another two or three small parties like the Greens and so on, who are splitting the vote on a proportional representation basis. This means that Scotland will almost never have a strong majority one-party government. So the Scottish Parliament, it was designed to fail, and Nicola Sturgeon almost pushed it over the edge where it could actually not fail, where you could actually have an effective Scottish Parliament that could cause trouble. But now, with somebody like Humza in charge, I can see the Scottish National Party continuing to lose popularity, continuing to shrink back. And as it does so, it loses the appeal that comes from a strong and dominant party, which causes a further downward spiral. So the Scottish Parliament is fated to be an ineffectual talking shop, and that was always the design, and the election of Humza Yousaf plays perfectly into that. So Scottish politics is going to become less and less important, and I think you can safely forget about it. Now, of course, we also have a South Asian occupying the seat of UK Prime Minister. Probably that's going to end at the next election, when we'll have a dull, boring white guy in charge again. Over and out.